Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next YouTube video. This is going to be my next Transformers Prime Beast Hunters episode review. And today I'm going to be reviewing Thirst, which was the 8th episode of this season, which is Season 3 of Transformers Prime. Now, before I get into that, brief channel update sort of thing. I will have an Avatar video out this week. There's not yet been one, but I will have one. I'm just waiting to see how some news goes in terms of, like, is there going to be some more news that comes out, or is that going to be it for now? The track team announcement kind of sort of come out, but the track teams themselves haven't said anything about it, so just waiting for that. More than likely I will have a video tomorrow, so look out for that. But anyway, Transformers Prime. Thirst, really fun episode once again, but also had some very nice dark moments. It was a Decepticon focused episode, which had the fun, which maybe sometimes the Decepticons don't always have. And, you know, it was just this nice horror episode kind of in the middle of the season. Take a break from the whole Predacon thing, the hunting for the bones, and focusing on the Predacons, and just had an episode on the Decepticon ship again. So that really worked for me. And Transformers Prime this season has just been really good for me. Like, I really liked it. The opening four-parter was excellent. Though a little bit hindered by the fact that it was an opening four-parter that had to set up a lot of stuff for this season. Episode 5 was a bit set-up-y for the Predacon cloning and stuff like that. And then since then, it's just been really fun. Chain of Command, +1, exceptionally fun episodes. This is kind of the same. I've just been so excited to see each episode of Transformers Prime, to the point where I'm actually like staying up to watch like live streams of the episodes. So they come on about like 1 o'clock here in Ireland, so it's been a lot of fun there, definitely. Just seeing the excitement of watching the episode as pretty much everyone else is watching it as well, so this definitely was, I think, a very enjoyable episode for most of the fandom as well. But anyway, I'll get into some specifics on the episode now. I suppose the main plot of this episode, the Decepticon kind of combination zombie vampires, the Terracons as they're referred to in this episode. I loved the way that this came about, in that it wasn't just Dark Energon, but it was Dark Energon with Synthetic Energon, Synthan, and those combined together to basically make this effectively Terracon disease type of thing, and caused Cyrus breakdown. They're kind of together now. It's weird. His return as well was interesting as well, but the fact that they made him, who was not just a transformer, like who was kind of like dead, like Breakdown, but the fact that they had the human who was like interfaced with a transformer body to be the kind of spreading of this disease, and like you sort of wonder, like, is the only reason it even happened was because of the human aspect there, or whatever. But that was very dark in that Knockout was experimenting on Silas the whole time, and you could just see him like completely being tortured. And this guy who you really can't feel any sympathies for, because he killed basically all of Mech in the episode where he was made into Breakdown, and all the stuff he'd done before then, but you really do feel a bit of like sympathy for him here, because he's being completely tortured by Knockout, just being injected with anything Knockout wants to test, and then especially here when he's basically turned into a mindless kind of Terracon zombie thing. And then ultimately it ends with his death at the hands of Arachnid, and that was like, whoa. And he says like, thank you. He's the guy who wanted to be interfaced with a machine, and then it just all went wrong for him, and he's just happy to have it end, have his nightmare end. So that was like this dark moment where they just had Silas die on screen, but it also worked really well within the episode because realistically they couldn't really go anywhere else with Silas now that they had him like this. So to just like put that kind of plot thread to bed in a really interesting way, it worked. But getting back to the plague basically itself, very interesting how it kind of just happened. Like, Synthetic Energon basically makes Transformers more aggressive, basically more powerful, stronger, but less on the thinking side of things. And then Dark Energon makes them kind of even more crazy like. So it was a bad choice kind of coming together, Knockout and Starscream. Just didn't work out at all. And Breakdown caused the basically plague as it spread to the Viacons and so on. And then as we gradually found out more about it, that they have their kind of tentacle things. It transformed their mouth into this. It's kind of vampiric, and they're draining bodies completely of energon. And the whole thing about it is that they basically use up their natural energon reserves, and so they need to kind of constantly feast on it. That was interesting, I suppose, about Cybertronian physiology as well, because we've never really had it confirmed to us here, but here we have it that they have a natural reserve of energon, kind of like humans, I suppose, have a natural reserve of blood, and that was the aim here. That, like, if you lose too much blood or energon, you need more, kind of that sort of thing. So that was nice, and throughout the whole episode, and then like while this was all going on, you had amazing interplay between Starscream and Knockout, who have always had a nice chemistry together, but here just had basically the complete focus of the episode on them. It just worked very well in that constantly, like, he's the mad scientist, and then Starscream has the kind of cruelty that Knockout kind of looks up to a little bit, and kind of Starscream obviously respects Knockout's medical scientific background as well. So I just come up with this idea together, Starscream tries to bring it to Megatron, and you had this kind of funny moment, again, kind of coming back to the Shockwave Starscream Megatron relationship, and that Megatron is just completely like loving Shockwave at the moment. He's just talking to him on over the comlink kind of thing. As Starscream's talking to him, and then he's just like, no, Shockwave, no. It wasn't anyone important, and then just like, hey Megatron, isn't he your like second in command of the Decepticons, and he's not important anymore? So it's just like, oh Starscream, you can't do anything right anymore, and that was nice. And then, they finally realize we're in over our heads, but Starscream's like, we can't basically set the alarm off on the ship. Just like, Megatron will think we caused it, and then Knockout's like, we did cause it, and that was like hilarious. And then I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in my life. As I said, I watched this episode at like 1 o'clock in the morning live stream. I nearly woke up the house. I was laughing so much at the moment where basically they think they're gonna die. They're hiding out in like a computer room, and they're kind of like kneeling down. They're kind of sitting down next to each other, and it's just like Starscream's like, it's been an honor to serve Megatron beside you, and then Knockout just goes to him, just like, I've always admired your, and I was so expecting him to say his like cruelty or something like that, but then he says your lustrous finish, and I just completely lost it. I was just like, that is an amazing line, because it's so in Knockout's character in that he constantly is talking about his paint, his finish, and how he looks, and he's just like, oh, he kind of likes the look of Starscream, and I was just like, oh, wow, that's a brilliant line. And as I said, for pretty much the past 2 reviews, the writers are having so much fun here, and there's a lot of humour, as I said, with the Megatron line earlier on, with this line here, and then the reaction where they just kind of cut out to a wide shot where you see both of them just sitting next to each other, and Knockout's just like smiling, kind of like after he said your lustrous finish, and then Starscream's like, and then he's like, well, we've had that moment now, and then they walk off, and that was just, yes, perfect moment, I think, between them. Eventually Megatron does find out, and obviously he's mad at both of them, but the main idea is that they have to get rid of the plague before it takes over the whole ship. And, he sends basically those two to make amends by taking out Silas. And if they take out him, the plague will basically stop. That's kind of what it's saying, that he was the one that was infected while still alive, so he wasn't dead. So he's basically controlling the rest of them. That's what it's more or less saying, I think. And throughout this, we're told that even a small bite, not just draining them of energon, can basically turn you into one of these Terracons. We were told that, and so while they're out hunting, Silas basically frees Arachnid from her stasis pod. And that in itself, I was not expecting this. I was expecting this to heavily focus on zombies on the Decepticon ship, and it to be a kind of very once-off episode where it really didn't do anything for the main plot. But it actually did a lot, and it all came because of the introduction of Arachnid, really. And that, it's one of the kind of main characters kind of coming back into it. Arachnid's alive again. She has the confrontation with Breakdown, who she thought she killed, and she's about to be turned into a zombie. She kind of fights it off, and you think she's made it. and then she basically takes out Breakdown, and then she discovers that Silas is inside, and that leads to the death of Silas, which ended that plot, which was important for him because it was the whole mech story kind of finally comes to a complete end here. That was nice. And then you think she hasn't been infected, but the thing is, when you look back at that scene when she's fighting and she nearly gets hit, you see the kind of tentacle thing come out, but it's kind of obscured where it actually hits her because of the angle that it's done at. But then when you come to the final scene of the episode, the kind of she obviously is put through the space bridge by Soundwave, and then you think, oh, they're not going to come back to her after she screams. But then they go from like the final scene on the ship to the kind of her with the moon in the background telling all of the Insecticons to come before her, and you're like, what is she doing? Then the camera swings around, you see her neck has a scar on it, and you're just like, oh, she was actually like just scratched a little bit by the thing, but we just couldn't see that it actually happened. That was a nice kind of fake out moment, and then you're just like, oh, what is she doing? Because you haven't quite like put it all together. She put her hand on the thing's neck, and then the tentacle comes out, and you're like, what? This thing is still going on, and now she's in control, not only because she's an insect and has control of the Insecticons, but because she's the new leader of the Terracons, and she has control over them like Silas kind of did. And you're like, whoa. And this is the big kind of plot point that wasn't expected, because one, it takes the Insecticons away from the Decepticon ranks, which gives them a need to make more Predacons to bolster their army. That's a nice plot point by itself. But also, it sets up Arachnid to be the third faction once again. And I was completely not expecting this. I was expecting the three factions to basically be Autobots, Decepticons, and Predacons break away at the end of the series and rebel against both. But here, we're kind of introduced to, for now, a third one, because the Predacons really haven't come that much into it. So I'm really excited to see what they do with kind of vampire Arachnid and her vampire insect sort of thing, because it was a complete shock to me. Going back a bit in the episode, we had Arachnid kind of wanting revenge against Soundwave for basically him embarrassing her at the end of season 1, where he just completely like beat her when she tried to take over the Decepticons. And so she goes for him, but he just does the space bridge thing again and sends her to what appears to be one of the moons of Cybertron, which it hasn't been referred to yet in Prime yet, but we assume it's either Luna 1 or Luna 2. So that's pretty cool. And it's just like, oh, they're here, they're nowhere near a space bridge, really, we assume. So how are they even going to get back into the fray on Earth, or is stuff going to come to Cybertron later on? That adds more to that whole conflict as well. I pretty much covered most of the episode here, but I suppose the one final thing to talk about is, I suppose, the ultimate end to Knockout and Starscream point in the episode, and that once the whole thing's over, they kind of reveal that, okay, containment measures have been made on the ship, everything's fine now on the Decepticon ship, but they don't have the Insecticons anymore, so they just have the Vehicons, and arguably the Insecticons were the more powerful of the two kind of groups of soldiers. So Megatron asks Shockwave to basically further accelerate the Project Predacon, to make more Predacon clones. And this, combined with the fact that Predaking appears to be more intelligent and is planning something from the previous episode, is leading towards something big near the end of this season. Knockout basically gets demoted a bit in that he basically can't do any individual projects anymore. He has to do it under the supervision of Shockwave. And then Starscream goes back to basically being beaten by Megatron for being an idiot again. Now, this is maybe the slight issue with the episode, the one issue with this episode, in that maybe the show has got to a stage where it's treating Starscream less like a threat. Though when you look back at the season, this Starscream was never really that much of a threat. Yes, he kills Cliffjumper in the first episode, but this is a defenseless Cliffjumper that he didn't even need to kill. And then any other time he's been a threat, it's always been kind of a sneak attack or something like that. He injures RC in that episode because she shows him a bit of mercy. But he's never been the guy that's going to just take the Decepticons over and kill Megatron. He's always been the guy who's like, when he follows Megatron's orders, like at the end of Season 2, he's really effective as just the Decepticon Air Commander. But when he tries too hard to basically up himself in the Decepticon army, he fails horribly. When he tries to outdo Shockwave, he fails. When he tries to get in better into Megatron's books, he fails. And that's what he's kind of doing wrong here. He just needs to accept, like he kind of did before he left, that all he's ever going to be is the second in command. And that's all he needs to accept to be a kind of good Decepticon. But he can't, because that's Starscream. He has to kind of try and get himself further, but fails in the process. So that's pretty much all there is to this episode. Not much else to say beyond the fact that, you know, it's confirmed now that the doctors, Ratchet for the Autobots and Knockout for the Decepticons, are both working on synthetic energon. So at some stage, we're probably going to come to the episode where Ratchet maybe perfects the formula, because if any of you have seen the new Optimus Prime toy, actually get it and show you for a second. Here it is. Now, here he is. Now, obviously, this is the new Optimus Prime design from the show Beast Hunters. This is Beast Hunters' design. Now, you can see the windows are green, eyes, light piping are green. He also comes with a green sword as well, so this is kind of hinting at synthetic energon a bit, because there's no reason really for Optimus to have these green parts when in the show these parts are actually blue so far. So is that hinting that Ratchet will eventually perfect the formula, and basically them being able to use this, basically have an endless supply of energon and be powerful, and this is ultimately what leads to the Autobots maybe being able to take on the Predacons kind of one-on-one properly. But overall, that's basically everything I have to say about this episode. Really enjoyed it. Only minor problem maybe with where they're going with Starscream. I do hope they give him a few more kind of serious moments and allow him to do something that's not just for comedic value. Other than that, really excited about where the show's going. I think it's taking a break now after this episode, so I don't think it's going to be back till maybe late this month or early next month, but I'm not quite sure. But either way, it's coming back then for a few weeks, so that's good. So yeah, I'll see you whenever the next episode comes out, but thank you for watching this review, and bye.